Hi, my name is CJ, and this is how your dog earns their pet rent. This is Lincoln, a Legato Romagnolo that lives in my house and is way behind on his $45 per month pet rent. Legatos are a truffle hunting breed, and if you know anything about truffles, you know they're pretty expensive. For reference, white truffles can sell for up to $5,000 per pound. So as a first-time dog owner, I was pretty confident that this pet rent situation was actually covered. And as I'm sure anyone with a pet can imagine, that did not go well at all. Not only did we not train him to hunt truffles, this little guy has never worked a day in his life. Here, you can see he's snuggled up in a bed with his favorite toy and looking for a piece of cheese. So, no, Lincoln does not pay his own pet rent. Or so we thought. Humans have been living alongside dogs for a really good chunk of recorded history. And yes, these are all very old paintings featuring our fuzzy friend and very old breed, the Legato. But this isn't a history lesson, and this companionship holds true in modern day as well. According to Forbes and the American Veterinary Medical Association, over 50% of households in the U.S. have a dog or a cat, and even more if we account for more exotic types of pets, like fish, reptiles, and birds. For now, we're focusing on dogs for a very specific reason. The level of contact and interaction that humans have with their canines is a lot different than they would have with, say, a fish. So, how are these guys earning their keep? If you're thinking, well, it's often discussed how having a furry little companion can improve mental health, you'd be correct, but that's not exactly where we're headed. Our pets have a very real impact on our health through our microbiome. Challenges to studying the impact of pet ownership on the microbiome are numerous. There are more confounding variables that can influence the results than I can name. Species of pet, area of habitation, differences in attitude towards pets. Are they allowed to sleep in the bed? Are they allowed to eat human food? Are they allowed to give kisses? Multi-pet households, people who report not having a pet but are frequently in contact with pets, etc. So I think the best way to combat these issues is likely to employ studies in infants, since the infant microbiome is relatively well characterized and alterations are likely to be more prominent. It makes sense to us, after all this time in this course, that cohabitating family members share high levels of microbial diversity, especially on skin. However, this also tracks for dogs and their family members. This microbial influence extends beyond adult pet owners to children and infants too. Apologies for the poor image resolution. I promised I looked everywhere to get a better view, but I hope you can see here that these categories say things like pet exposure, breastfeeding status, maternal race, etc. This is a study done analyzing the species richness of infants about 3 months post-birth, which compares infants who have never been exposed to a pet to those who were only exposed prenatally and those who were exposed both pre- and postnatally. These red bubbles indicate positive correlations between pet exposure and increased presence of that particular species. A specific finding of this paper was an increase in abundance of Ruminococcus and Oscilliospira in infant fecal samples for those who had been exposed to pets pre- and postnatally. Additionally, infants with pet exposure had a higher FP ratio, which indicates microbial maturity. Importantly, these changes in microbiota are linked to a decreased risk of childhood metabolic disease and a decreased risk of childhood atopic disease, which are things like eczema, asthma, and other IgE-mediated allergic reactions. Today, we see an increased incidence of allergic sensitivity and asthma in children, and some point to a theory known as the hygiene hypothesis. Production of IgE has been associated with asthma, and total IgE has been a metric to measure risk for asthmatic disease. In a study examining total IgE in children with and without prenatal indoor pet exposure, it was determined that those children with prenatal pet exposure had a 28% decrease in total IgE production. This is particularly helpful in C-section deliveries, as we know from previous modules that the microbiome of babies delivered via C-section are altered and often less diverse than those with a vaginal birth. This decrease in IgE supports a lower risk for development of allergic and autoimmune diseases for children. So, overall, the bottom line is this. Unless you have a TikTok or Instagram for your pet, they likely aren't bringing actual cash to the table to cover their portion of the pet rent. But this doesn't mean that they're not bringing something important into our lives that is more measurable than love and companionship. These fuzzy little friends are simultaneously hilarious to take pictures of and improving our health through increased microbial diversity, which is helping us process allergens in a controlled environment to better equip our immune systems for the world outdoors. How much do your spring allergies bother you? Enough to go to the shelter or contact a reputable breeder to bring home your new best friend and allergy fighter all in one? And if you're trying to convince your partner to get a pet, play this video really loudly next time they're in the room. Thanks, guys.